Is this thing on? My name's Bond. James Bond. I've always wanted to say that. I've always wanted to say this as well. Action! And maybe I'll be saying it on the set of my movie, Saving Judy Garland. Well, a man can dream, right? I mean, I'd have to delete all my internet history, but controversy is part of life. And if Kevin Spacey can reinvent himself, why can't I? Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. You can follow me on X, Twitter, at Movies TV Mad, and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X, on TikTok Mad Mickey's World, and on Snapchat BMouth60 Mick, your host with the most. And we all know that is true. A very warm welcome to Sunday's edition of the DCU Daily, and I hope you're having a lovely Sunday wherever you are in the universe. Now, welcome to episode 3 of my continuing series as part of the build-up to this year's Superman film. I'm talking about the history of Superman on film and television, and today we're talking about the big one. We're talking about Superman 1978. This film means everything to me. It means everything to me because it's the first film I ever saw. Superman 78 was the first film I ever saw, and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was the first film I ever saw in a movie theatre in a cinema. And I remember it because I wanted to go to the toilet for the entire film, and I didn't want to miss the film, so I held it in. I know it's a bit gross, but I held it in for the entire movie. And it's quite ironic, with everything that's going on with Snow White right now. What a beautiful experience that was. I don't believe you could make Superman 78 the way it was today. It's absolutely a product of its time, and that's okay. But I don't think you understand fundamentally what it took to make this movie. It was virtually impossible to make a man fly convincingly in the 70s. VFX was a very difficult thing to execute. I mean, they did have some effects houses, as they called them. There was no huge technology. Obviously, Superman 78 came off the back of Star Wars 77, George Lucas's first Star Wars movie. And the effects broke ground in that film as well. And Superman 78, is an interesting animal, if you like, because what they used was a rear projection. Now, I still love the idea of rear projection. I'd like to use rear projection if I made a movie. I think what they should do today is use rear projection and touch it up with CGI. You see, I genuinely believe now that CGI should just be used to touch up physical effects rather than CGI being used wholeheartedly. If you've ever seen a review on YouTube, Nerdrodic or The Critical Drinker, they will say something like the CGI was rubbish. A lot of the times it's not that it's rubbish or they've made mistakes with the CGI, because CGI when it first started looked amazing because it was a brand new exciting technology. Now it just looks fake. You know it's fake. If we go back to the flying in Superman 78 when he's flying after those rockets, it looks real. It looks like he's actually flying after those rockets, and it's a mixture of great rear projection. And they used that kind of technology back in 38 for The Wizard of Oz as well. It's an amazing part of doing VFX. But Superman 78 is a very, very special film. Now, originally, James Bond director Guy Hamilton was tapped to direct this movie, not Dick Donner. And what happened was they were going to direct or make the movie in Italy. And what happened was a legal case was brought against Bertolucci, the director, and Marlon Brando for The Last Tango in Paris. The problem was they then wanted to go and make the movie in the UK, but the director, Guy Hamilton, basically was an expatriate. He was a tax exile, and he could only spend about 40 days a year in the UK. So it was a choice between Marlon Brando, Guy Hamilton. Who do you choose? You choose Marlon, don't you? Obviously, that was going to be a big reason why people were going to go and watch that movie, because people weren't there was no superhero movies, right? There'd been some cheaply made Superman series and reels. I mean, obviously the George Reeves show, which I still watch today and really, really enjoy. And so they decided to bring in Dick Donner, who was suggested by Ilya Sorkin's ex-wife, Sky Albury. She said, oh my God, he's amazing. He looks like Clark Kent because he used to wear glasses back then. And Ilya said, yes, but what has he done? He had done The Omen starring screen legend Gregory Peck. So Dick Donner took one look at the script and saw it was too campy. He hated it. Now, he was very good friends with screenwriter and, rewriter Tom Mankiewicz, who had rewritten a lot of Bond movies at the time. And Tom was a great guy, if you've ever seen his interviews. Lovely, wholehearted, kind, generous man. Brilliant guy, and he was very good friends with Dick. You should listen to the commentary of Superman 78. They're such good mates, and they have a good laugh during that commentary. It's amazing. But Tom doesn't get the credit he deserves for Superman 78. Everyone talks about Dick Donner, but not Tom. But he creates some wonderful original characters like Otis and Miss Tessmacher. He was the one who decided that the Kryptonians should speak in stilted English. He was actually the one who created a lot of the concept of the Kryptonian alphabet on the different costumes as well. So he was a very, very clever guy. So why is Superman 78 the movie that people think about when they think about superhero movies? Why did Kevin Feige, even Kevin Feige himself, look at that film as an inspiration for the MCU? He admitted the aesthetics for his movies, the humor, the way they mix humor and drama within the MCU, or the way they used to do it in such a good way. In fact, what Feige used to do with the early MCU, he used to get comedy writers to do all the gags. And I think the gags really worked in the early days because they did that. But Dick Donner had a lot of warmth, right? He had a message on his door that said, leave your ego at the front door. But he was an amazing, warm-hearted director who was under a lot of pressure. Now, we know he was fired after he did Superman 78. If Dick and Tom had stayed together, they had plans for 4 movies. And they would have been amazing, because Superman 78 was amazing. So it was hard for Richard Donner to make Superman 78. It was a monumental effort. It's one of the longest shoots in Hollywood history. And the movie he put together was sensational. It allowed us to dream of a better world, of a better fantasy world. But why is Superman 78 such a magical movie? He said to Tom Mankiewicz, Dick Donner said, if we make the love story work, the movie works. And absolutely, the love story between Superman and Lois in Superman 78 works. It's 2 kids, as Dick Donner said, on a date. And it works. First of all, the screen chemistry between Reeve and Kidder is absolutely magical. Margot Kidder is an amazing Lois Lane. She's scatty, she's gobby. I mean, she really set up the premise of the modern day strong, independent, gobby Lois Lane. But she is amazing, and the romance between those 2 people is probably one of the most magical things about the movie. But the movie tells the origin story beautifully. I love John Barry's production design of Krypton and the Fortress of Solitude. He was also the production designer on Star Wars 77. So he was an amazing guy with a vast imagination. And your production designers are one of your most important things on a movie, and your costume designers, because that's the visual storytelling. I love talking to costume designers, production designers, because all they want to do is create the best kind of visual medium for you. They're just about their art. There's no ego about these people, and that's what I love about them so much when I speak to them. But you're talking about the 70s, and I mean, you look at John Williams' music, it's absolutely magical. John, when he talks about how he, what the mindset was to compose the theme to compose the score of Superman 78, said, well, what he didn't want to do is take the movie too seriously. There's serious dramatic music, but there's also good music for the humorous moments as well, as you can see from the theme he gives Otis in Superman 78 as well. But I don't think that film would work today. I think it worked then. It works for us who watched it. I think if you're a kid and you watch this film today, you'll enjoy it. I mean, it is dated in places, but it's kind of timeless in other places. Look, the nostalgia of watching that film is absolutely beautiful, but I do not believe that's how you should make a Superman film today. Are there any negatives about Superman 78? There'll be Snyder fans saying, oh, saving a cat from a tree, blah, blah, blah. Listen, Snyder was going to take his Superman to that. He was going to become that Superman. But Cavill's Superman was going to go through a journey of discovery before becoming the Superman we know and love. Do I think it's important that Superman saves a cat from a tree? No, neither do I think it's a bad thing, right? I think what Donner did, he mixed seriousness with comedy, with campiness, if you like, without making it too campy. And I think that was also important. But I don't think just because I love Superman 78, that's how all Superman movies should be made. There's a lot of people who think that if you just do what Donner did, you've got a successful Superman movie. No, as I said on the top of the show, Superman 78 is a product of its time. It's a fabulous movie that made nearly 400 million at the time. Now today, if you translate it for today's money, it's over $1 billion, right? Now you've got to remember, there was no IMAX, there was no 3D screens back then, there was lesser theatres back then to release movies in, so if there was more screens back then, it would have made even more money. It was a record-breaking amount of money. Superman 78 made a lot of money. Superman 2 made less. It went up against Raiders of the Lost Ark. That was part of the reason for that. But it was a huge success. But on release, no Superman movie at its time has ever made $1 billion. And that's an interesting thing. Neither Superman 78, Superman 2, Superman 3, Superman 4 was a flop. Superman Returns, basically, in every sense of the word, was a flop. Man of Steel made a profit. Man of Steel did okay. 650 million. That's double what Superman Returns made. So with all the complaints of Man of Steel, we will get to Man of Steel in this series of videos. Don't you worry about that. And I think we should do a Batman versus Superman one as well, because we're looking at the history of Superman. And I don't want to talk about all the history in Superman in film and TV. I want to talk about what I experienced, what means something to me. But this film is wonderfully funny, it's wonderfully emotional, the characters leap off the screen, it's just wonderful. The Daily Planet feels like a bustling, busy newspaper. And of course, newspapers are run a lot now online. It's changed, and that's an interesting thing. And I think one of the reasons I think a Superman movie should be kind of more set in the past, set in the 40s, 50s, right? Because of the newspaper situation, because newspapers are becoming a thing of the past. I think the Superman aesthetic kind of is a little bit old-fashioned, and if you predate it historically, if you make a Superman movie a period piece, it makes more sense. I think Superman makes less sense in the modern world. Now, what Gunn's going to attempt to do is talk about a good guy who people are thinking about, hey, hang on a minute, why is he being so nice? What is he after? That's the whole thing Gunn's going to go for. And I think it's kind of an interesting intellectual way to go at a Superman movie. And we'll see if the movie is any good. We've spoken about that movie so much. Let's just see it and judge it on its merits. But in terms of Superman 78, it really was a huge moment. Not just in the comic book movie genre, because it's the first of its type. It's amazing, really. The first of the comic book movie genre is still one of the best. What Dick Donner did was amazing, and he rejected so many offers to make more comic book movies because he said he did it. He knew, and he admitted, he said, I could never do it as good as I made that. Because The industry had changed. They probably wouldn't let him spend all that money and try and make it as good as possible. That's why Donna, in the end, fell out with the Salkinds. He didn't want to make a cheap movie. He wanted to make a great movie, and he did.